Did you know that Malbec is actually not indigenous to Argentina? It's indigenous to France. But because Argentina has made Malbec, not only the wine, but the grape, so popular, a lot of people, well, actually almost everybody associates Malbec with Argentina. So that, along with many other things, are what we're going to cover in today's video, the basics of French wine. So just a disclaimer, this video is meant to be based on generalities, okay? I'm not going to cover everything in detail. I just want to give you some basics of French wine to help you in your everyday life, whether you're shopping in a store for wine or whether you are buying wine in a restaurant and want to know what to go for, okay? So again, I'm just focusing on generalities, so if I leave something out, it was deliberate, okay? So some background on France. France is one of the largest wine-producing regions in the world, okay? History dates French winemaking back to the 6th century BC, with many of France's wine regions dating back to Roman times. Now, when you're learning about French wine or reading about it, what have you, one of the terms you're going to see come up is terroir. So what is terroir? Terroir is the complete natural environment in which a particular wine is produced, including factors such as soil, the climate, the topography, and so forth. In other words, it's the characteristic taste and flavor imparted on a wine by the environment in which it's produced. So in other words, the amount of rainfall, the temperature, is the soil more clay-like, is it more or granite-like, is it a tougher environment to grow grapes, is it an easier environment to grow grapes, you know, so on and so forth. All of these factors come into play that influence the grapes, which influence the wine and how it's going to taste. That's why you can take the same grape and grow it all over the world, you know, Cabernet Sauvignon or Pinot Noir, and it's going to taste different. Now, granted, the winemaker is going to have influence over that wine too, if whatever it is they do to it during the winemaking process. But the terroir plays a significant role in the final product, okay? That's why, for example, if you get a Sancerre, which is a Sauvignon Blanc from the Sancerre region of France, it is going to taste completely different to a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, which tends to be heavy with grapefruit or tropical fruit characteristics. Or, going back to the original example at the beginning of the video, Malbec in Argentina. The terroir in Argentina, in particular the Mendoza region, is so well suited for Malbec, which is why it just exploded down there, and why everybody's growing it, and they're making fantastic wines. Some grapes are better suited for certain environments or certain terroir. One of the things I love about Europe more than any other country when it comes to wine is the classification systems that the European wine-producing countries have, okay? In other words, it's like a grading system, for lack of a better way of putting it, and the purpose of it is to ensure quality. Okay. In France, it's known as the AOC, the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. All right, I don't speak French. I hope that was good enough. In these countries with their classification system, it's quite simple. As you move up to the higher levels of classification, the rules get stricter. And those rules can be regulating everything from what grapes are allowed to be used, to where the wine is produced, to what style it's produced, to how much is made. They'll only allow a certain amount, you know, how much yield is allowed. How it's fermented. Is it aged in oak? What kind of oak? There are many, many rules, and I'll get into this in more detail in another video. But just to sum it up, in Europe, there's a classification system for each country to maintain the quality and protect the quality of the wines, and to also protect you as the consumer. So this way, if you buy a wine, you know what you're getting. In other words, let's use Chablis as an example. If you buy a Chablis, then you can be comfortable knowing that it is going to be made with a Chardonnay grape, it's going to be made in a certain way, fermented in a certain way, and it's going to follow strict standards to ensure that whatever it is you buy is going to meet the quality standards. So it's like a safeguard for you, okay? I wish more countries had that, actually. Related to what we spoke about with the classification system, one note about European wine that's different than, I think, just about the entire rest of the world. European wines are much more region dependent for the most part. So in other words, many of the wines are named after the region they're from. Chablis is the name of a region. Champagne is the name of a region. Chianti is the name of a region. Chianti Classico is the name of a more specific region. Cognac is a region. Armagnac is a region. These regions really come into play because it allows you to see the differences in the styles between the regions. In other words, a Chablis, which is made with Chardonnay, is going to taste much different than a Merceau, which is also made with Chardonnay. Okay, they're completely different styles, and they're also the name of a region. That brings me to a term that you may see come up when you're investigating French wine, and it's called protected designation of origin. So what does protected designation of origin mean? It's the name of a geographical region or specific area that is recognized by official rules to produce certain foods with special characteristics related to that location. In other words, protected designation of origin products are most closely linked to the concept of terroir, okay? And this goes back to the significance of the region, okay? So each region is going to produce something in a certain way, so when you drink the wine from that region stands out, if that makes sense. That's my definition. It's not a textbook definition. So now let's go through each region. Now I'm only going to cover the main regions that you would come in contact with more commonly, if you're shopping for wine or buying wine in the store. So I'll touch on each region, the typical grapes used, and the typical style of wine, okay, to help you with your wine educational journey. So the first region we're going to touch on is Alsace. This is predominantly a white wine region. The predominant grapes are Gewürztraminer, Riesling, Pinot Blanc, and Pinot Gris. Now, one point about Riesling. The general public associates Riesling with sweet wines. Trust me when I tell you the world of Riesling is so much more than that. Between Alsace and Germany, I know we're not covering Germany, but they're both known for their Rieslings. Riesling can be bone dry, it can be semi-dry, it can be semi-sweet, sweet, it can be sparkling, and there's even red Rieslings. Riesling is the most versatile grape on the planet. I highly recommend that you try some good Riesling. Go to a wine store and speak to somebody and get a recommendation for a good Riesling. You're going to want to spend in the 20, and I would say around the mid-20s for a good Riesling on average. And then, of course, the price can go up. Gewürztraminer is typically sweet. A lot of times you'll see them on menus in Thai restaurants because you need something to counter the spice. And a lot of fruit or sweet is very good to counter spicy food. Pinot Blanc and Pinot Gris, these are fantastic white wines as well. They're crisp. They have a nice tartness and acidity to them. Now, one thought on white wines for you. Here's how I classify white wine. There's three general categories. Again, I'm working with generalities here. You have the sweet white wines. You have the oaky, or they don't have to be oaky, but the buttery, creamier style white wines, like many of the Chardonnays you get in California, or there are Chardonnays in France that have the buttery, creamy, and oaky style. And then you have the other white wines that don't have the sweetness, or there's maybe a little bit, and they don't have the buttery and oakiness and creaminess, but they're the more crisp style with some more tartness and acidity. That's where you're going to find the more of the drier Rieslings, the Pinot Blancs, and the Pinot Gris in that category, the more crisp, clean style. Next up is Beaujolais. Beaujolais is the name of the region. It's also the name of the wine. See here, like I mentioned before, the region. Many wines are named after the region. Here's a perfect example, Beaujolais. Now, the grape is Gamay. So Beaujolais will be some of the lightest red wines. There will be a bit of acidity to them, some fruit, almost maybe, I almost get a bit of a tartness in a way. And these wines are very approachable. So for people who are new to wine and just getting into it, Beaujolais can be a good place to start. They're very easy drinking, affordable. Many of you may know the Beaujolais Nouveaux that come out once at a certain time every year. And Beaujolais is also a fantastic wine to go with Thanksgiving dinner, okay? Because, you've got light proteins and you have root vegetables and you have some sweet like cranberry sauce, stuff like that. And lastly, Beaujolais is also part of the Burgundy region. Next, we go to Bordeaux. Bordeaux is known for their red and white wines, although they are more predominantly known for their red wines, okay, the big, more full-bodied reds. Although one of the most famous dessert wines in the world is from Bordeaux. It's called Sauternes. Sauternes is the sub-region within the Bordeaux region, and the most famous Sauternes of all is Chateau d'Yquem. So what grapes are you going to find in Bordeaux wines? If it's a white Bordeaux, it'll be Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, or Muscadel. The red grapes allowed are Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. Anytime you come across a Bordeaux, whether it's white or red, it's going to be a blend. Here's a quick note on your reds. If it is a left bank Bordeaux, meaning it's from the left bank, it's going to be predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon followed by Merlot, and then they may use some of the other grapes in smaller percentages. If it's a right bank Bordeaux, it'll be predominantly Merlot followed by Cabernet Sauvignon, and then some of the other grape varieties blended in as well. These reds from Bordeaux are going to be more fuller bodied, so you're going to have them with heavier meat dishes. Let me touch on white Bordeaux's before we leave Bordeaux and move on to the next region. I've already mentioned Sauternes, which is one of the most famous dessert wines in the world, or sweet wines, I should say. The whites from Bordeaux that are not sweet are phenomenal. Okay, they're typically light to medium bodied. I had a beautiful white Bordeaux recently that was a blend of Sauvignon Blanc, Muscadel, and Semillon. Not too fruity, although I picked up a little bit of stone fruit. Really good balance of fruit and acidity. White Bordeaux's are horribly underrated. Okay, let's go into Burgundy, or as they would say, Bourgogne. If it's a red Burgundy, it'll be Pinot Noir, always. If it's a white Burgundy, it'll be Chardonnay, always. Rare exceptions. Again, I'm focusing on generalities here, okay? Like, I'm aware there's a very small region in the Burgundy region called, I believe, Saint-Brie, if I'm not mistaken, and they allow Sauvignon Blanc. But for your general purposes, just remember, if it's a red Burgundy, it'll be Pinot Noir. If it's a white Burgundy, it will be Chardonnay. Now, I mentioned before that Beaujolais is part of the Burgundy region, but that's not called a Burgundy, it's called a Beaujolais. And it's made with the Gamay grape, not Pinot Noir. I spoke before about terroir and how it influences the grapes and the flavor of the wine after it's made when you drink it. Here's a perfect example. Pinot Noirs from France are not going to be anything like the Pinot Noirs from California. For example, the climate in California is hotter, the grapes ripen faster, you get more fruit in the wine. The climate in Oregon is more similar to the climate in Burgundy. So the style of Pinot Noir in Oregon is going to be more similar to the style of Pinot Noirs from the Burgundy region. Okay, so that's just to help you understand how significant terroir is in determining what the final product is going to taste like and the style, all right? Here's another thing you need to understand. I'm going to emphasize the region again. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're looking for a Chardonnay and you go into the store and you meander into the French wine section and you look for Chardonnays. Well, a Chablis is going to taste completely different than a Merceau. So this is where you as the consumer, you need to understand the basic style of each region. Okay, so again, if you're looking for Chardonnay, make sure you do a little homework or speak to somebody in the store and get some help. And on that note, whenever you're asking for help in a wine store, always ask the person what their area of specialty is. The guy who's an expert on German wines may not be an expert on French wines, okay? So keep that in mind. Now we're going to go to Champagne, one of the most famous beverages in the world. Champagne is the name of the region. It's also the name of the wine. The grapes allowed to be used are Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay. If you ever see the term Blanc de Blanc on a wine label in France, it will typically denote it's 100% Chardonnay. If you see the term Blanc de Noir on a label, it'll be 100% Pinot Noir. And if you're wondering how you can get a white wine from red grapes, such as Pinot Noir, it has to do with the amount of time the skin is in contact while they make it. The longer the skin's left on, the more color you get in the wine, okay? Rosé, the skins are left on longer, you get the rosé pink color, but they're not left on as long as you would if you're making red. There are sparkling wines in France that are not from the Champagne region, and they are called Cremant. Also, a couple of terms for you in regards to Champagne you may see on labels that you may be wondering what they mean. Brut means dry. Extra dry is not as dry as brut. I know that makes no sense, but that's just how it is. Demi-sec is going to be sweet, but not sweet like syrupy sweet. And then doux, D-O-U-X, is going to be sweeter. Next, we have the Languedoc-Roussillon. This is the largest area for wine producing in France in terms of the surface area, the amount of space. This is where a lot of the more inexpensive wines are made. If you ever see a French wine and they put the grape on it, Pinot Noir or Chardonnay or whatever, it's not uncommon that that wine is going to be a more inexpensive, more mass-produced wine. Now we're off to the Lawar. It is predominantly a white wine region, although you will find Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon used in there as well. For the white grapes, it's typically Chenin Blanc and Sauvignon Blanc, and then there's some other lesser-known varietals. The most famous white from there is Sancerre. Sancerre is the region. The grape is Sauvignon Blanc, one of my favorite white of all time. Next, we go to Provence in the south of France. Provence is known for their rosés. Oftentimes, the grapes are Cinsault, Carignan, Mourvedre, and Grenache. And now we come to the Rhone region. The Rhone region is predominantly known for its red wines, but they also have some fantastic whites as well. The red grapes allowed are Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, Carignan, and Cinsault, or Australians call Syrah Shiraz. And in Spain, they call Grenache Garnacha. The white grapes allowed are Rousillon, Marsanne, Viognier, Grenache Blanc, and Picpoul. The whites from the Rhone region are also horribly underrated, like the whites from Bordeaux. And one of the most famous red wines is actually from the Rhone region. It's called Châteauneuf du Pape, or translated means House of the Pope. My favorite red wine of all time. So that takes us to the end. That is the basics of French wine. I will be doing other videos that cover each region and other things in more detail, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what you can expect from each region and so on and so forth. Please note, French wine oftentimes may be a bit pricier because some of the Burgundy, Bordeaux, Rhone, these are some of the most prized wine real estate locations in the world. Okay, so just like Napa Valley or Sonoma. So they can charge, and they will. There is a bit of a science to buying wine, and as I tell people, look, if you're going to buy a Burgundy or a Bordeaux or a Rhone or a Champagne, don't price shop. Okay, if you want to price shop, get a wine from Spain or Portugal or Chile, because they have some of the best value for dollar in the world. But don't do it with French wine, because you're generally going to taste it. Thank you for watching.